Do that, and you are going to demonstrate to this world that your faith is authentic, and this aroma of Christ will fill the room.
Well, good morning, church. It is so great to be with you on a very special holiday weekend. Again, I want to say happy Mother's Day to each of the moms out there. I also want to acknowledge that this is a hard day for a lot of people. And there's a variety of reasons. This may be a very difficult day for you, and so we want to make space for that. And I think one of the most beautiful aspects of the church is when we together are able to hold excitement, we're able to hold joy, and we're also able to hold grief and hold a mourning when there's room for that. And we do it all together, right? And that's what community is. It's the highs and it's the lows. And so I just want to begin today to say, if you're here today and this is like one of your favorite days because you get to be mom and you get to be celebrated, we want to celebrate you. We want to do that. And if you came in today and you're like, I don't know if I wanted to go to church today. I don't know if I want to hear all this talk about it. We see you as well. We want to make space for that. And so all of that hopefully is part of what the church is. Right, we bring it all together, and so let's talk a little bit about Mother's Day, and then we'll get into our message. One of the things I love about Mother's Day is that I feel like Mother's Day is the holiday where we give probably our most honest gifts. Like, think about things that you gave your mom over the years. Like, I remember, some of the things I gave now I like laugh about, but like I one year gave my mom a waffle maker because I wanted more waffles, and it was like, this will be a great gift for mom. Like you think about some of the gifts that we give moms on Mother's Day, they're the most honest presents that we give anyone. And I found a few cards that people gave to their moms on Mother's Day that I think illustrate this. Like, for example, if you have a little one and they're in school, they give those school activities. And so this one says, here's a coupon. You can redeem this coupon and I'll take out the trash. And if you can see, read it carefully, it says 0 times, which I love. The lady's like, I'm going to color it. I'm going to give it to mom, but I'm not going to be forced, to do anything I don't want to do. So mom, this coupon is worth 0 times of taking out the trash. So I guess it's just a cute little photo of mom. I'm not really sure what that is. Or maybe if you waited too long and you went to go get a Mother's Day card and they were all out. And so you had to get a little creative, right? You have this one. Congratulations on your engagement, someone gave to their mom. And then wrote, 28 years ago, that eventually led to you being my mother. I love the ingenuity there, right? Like, hey, we're going to make this card work. I'll tie it all together. Don't you worry. Or perhaps my favorite card, Happy Mother's Day, Joshua. Age 32, if you see the bottom corner there, right? Like, you're never too old to send mom a crafted Mother's Day gift. That's what I enjoy about Mother's Day, and so obviously we can laugh because moms, you're the heroes, right? You are in the thick of it, and we're sorry for all the things that we do to you, I guess, is the moral of that story. Well, hey, today we're going to continue, or actually wrap up this series we've been in called Love in Chaos. If you've got your Bibles out, we're going to be in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And so I want to give you a chance, if you brought a Bible, if you've got a Bible app and you want to turn to that. If you want to read the passage for yourself out of your own text, there's your chance. I'm going to give you a few moments to look that up before we get to it. But in week 6, as I was reading through the notes that Chris sent me, this was the big idea. And I know if you're in life groups, you're studying this together as well. But the big idea is this. It's a little wordy, but let's unpack it. Reflecting on the brevity of our lives leads us to make the most of our days, exercising our faith in Christ for the good of others. Okay, the first part of that phrase I really found moving. Reflecting on the brevity of our lives leads us to make the most of our days, right? And that is certainly appropriate on a Mother's Day weekend, on a weekend where we kind of stop. We slow down a little bit, hopefully. We say the things that maybe we feel, but we don't always say, or we don't say enough, right? And so it's one of those, like, let's just acknowledge that we don't know how long life is. We don't know what is yet to come. There's a brevity to all of this. And when we understand the brevity, it leads us to make the most of our days. Now, I want to share a few things that have been going on in our family in this season, because this was an interesting topic to get assigned at my life right now. And the reason why is we've been going through a number of things that have caused us to be very aware of the brevity of life. And it's some heavy stuff, but also some stuff that has led to a lot of gratitude and a lot of things that I want to just share with you today. But if you saw that the video of Bob Goff, he says a line in there that's easy to miss, but I want to unpack it. He says he doesn't think we lead people to Jesus. Okay, that's what he said. We don't lead people to Jesus. Jesus leads people to Jesus. Which, if you actually believe that, means, Christians, you can chill out a little bit, right? Like, we get so worked up. Like, I got to lead the world to Jesus. It's on my shoulders. If I don't do it right, if I don't say it right, if I don't live it right, like, relax. Take a deep breath. Jesus leads people to Jesus. I actually really agree with Bob on this. I don't think we're the ones who supernaturally bring people to Jesus. I think Jesus is already at work. I think what we can do in our finest moments is we can partner with Jesus. We can allow Jesus to use us, a part of what Jesus is already working on, a part of what Jesus is already doing. And what I have found is the best way to partner with Jesus in allowing others to be drawn to Jesus for themselves is to respond to Jesus in your own life. That when we react to Jesus in our world and they look at us and they go, why are you doing that? How did you just pull that off? How do you have this perspective? What is going on? And when there's that sense of intrigue, like, what are you doing right now? Why are you viewing it the way you are? That is what I think Jesus uses. That when we live a life and people go, I want that. Like, I don't know what that is. I don't know how you're doing that, but I want that. And I think that responding well to the brevity of our lives is actually an incredible way to live a life in such a way that other people go, hey, I want that. I want some of that as well. Now, like I said, in our own family, this has been something we've been learning a lot this year. Earlier this year, my wife turned 40, and she's the kind of person that's like, all right, I'm 40, I'm going to go to the doctor, we're just going to get everything checked out just because that's what you do when you hit a major milestone. So she's feeling great, no need to go to the doctor, just decided I'm going to go to the doctor because I'm 40. So she goes to the doctor, gets a checkup, everything looks great, and while she's there, her doctor just kind of casually says, oh, since you're just checking all these things out, have you ever done a genetic test? My wife Michelle's like, no, never have. What's that? And so she explains it to her. She's like, it's a few $100. No need to do it, but if you want to do it, you can just see kind of genetically what's going on and maybe, things to be aware of in the future. And so my wife's like, sure, let's do it. Throw it in. She gets this genetic test, and it's like 4 to 5 weeks from the time you get the test till you get the results. And so she gets this test. We don't think anything of it. And about a month later, she finds out the results. Well, I was actually ironically, as I think about this, I was with Chris when I got this phone call. I was on our covenant group. If you've heard Chris talk about it, we have a mentorship group of a number of pastors around the country. I was on that retreat, and I get a text from my wife, and she says, hey, I got the genetic results back. Can you call me? Now, husbands, right, okay, I'm going to step out of this meeting, and I'm going to call my wife because that's a weird way to phrase, hey, everything's good from the genetic test, right? So I call her, and I said, what did you find out? And she says, I just had a really hard conversation with the doctor. Evidently, I have a really rare gene called BRCA2. Some of you know what this is. I did not. So BRCA2 basically means she is predisposed to get cancer at a rate of about 85%. So when you have this gene, and numerous people have had this gene, you basically, you're acknowledging the likelihood of me getting cancer is incredibly high compared to society at large, or what most people have. It's an incredibly heightened risk. And so it was one of those phone calls where everything that I was worrying about prior to that, didn't matter. You know what I mean? Hey, stuff I got to do this week, shopping list, things work things. None of it matters because my first thought is, does my wife currently have cancer and we didn't know it? And, had no reason to think that there was any reason to do all these tests. And so that became, the first focus. But then number two is, even if we find out she doesn't, 85% is way too high. That's crazy. And it was one of those moments where the brevity of life came crashing in. And you might have had your own moment like this, where you get a phone call. You get a result of something. You find something out. And everything you thought was going to be and everything you were planning on, and we're going to get to that and we're going to get to this, all of a sudden it just kind of zooms into focus, right? And you go, yeah, those things don't matter. And that's the power of the brevity of life, is when you have these moments where we come up for air and we go, whoa, I don't know what the future holds. I'm not guaranteed all these things that in my mind I'm just kind of assuming are going to happen. It puts a lot of things in perspective. And yet here's the maybe surprising part. If I were to say to you, this is probably like 6 months ago now, maybe longer. If I were to say to you, hey, what has this last part of this year felt like for us? What's been the dominant emotion? The word I would tell you is gratitude. Maybe you go, that doesn't sound like that's what you should feel, right? Like we should feel like we're the victim, or woe is us, or this isn't fair, or how come, right? No, it hasn't been that. It's been gratitude. Because this has caused us to look at everything in our life with fresh eyes and go, we're not guaranteed any of the things. Now, we know that intellectually. You know that intellectually. But you get caught up in the motions. You get caught up just going through things and go, oh, we'll have it. And when you have these moments of, oh, life is brief, and you're not guaranteed it, it puts a lot of things in perspective. And yet the feeling that we keep having is gratitude. The pastor John Ortberg has said it like this: gratitude is the ability to experience life as a gift. It opens us up to wonder, delight, and humility. I love that phrase, the ability to experience life as a gift. You are given the breath that you breathe moment by moment. It is our daily bread, to use a phrase that you find in the scriptures, right? You're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're not given stuff for tomorrow. You're given stuff for today. You have what you need today. And even as Jesus taught us to pray, like, hey, pray in a very immediate sense. We are moment by moment experiencing God, moment by moment receiving the breath of life from God, with the acknowledgement of we have no idea about tomorrow. And yet, when you are present to that, when your eyes are open to that, I think it produces gratitude of, wow, look at what we have right now, this brevity of life. Now, when do we normally think of when we feel gratitude? Like when something goes great, when you get the promotion, when you find out big news, we're getting married, we're having a baby, I have a grandkid on the way. Those are the moments we think, I am so grateful. But is there something that has to happen really good in order for you to feel grateful? I mean, think about how in Christian circles we use the word blessed, #blessed, right? So blessed, so blessed. When do we normally use that? When we're celebrating something, when something's awesome, like I'm just so blessed, can't believe I have this. Do we still feel that feeling when we get the bad news, when we don't get what we want? Can we feel gratitude when we can't explain what's happening? Because so much of life you go, I don't know why we have this. I don't know why my wife has this rare genetic trait that most people don't have, that I had never even heard of before. I don't know why. But the brevity of life allows me just to be present. Now, what I have found, though, is there is a tendency, and I think it's higher in Christians, that we want to explain things. And what Christians do is we want to spiritually explain things. Why are we going through that? Why did that happen? Hold on, let me find a verse for you. I'll figure it out, right? Or let's go to Hobby Lobby and do some shopping, and we'll find something that we can hang on the wall, and it'll make it all make sense. It'll make it all feel good. It reminds me of a scene from The Office. Have you seen this show? I love this scene. Ryan's like, he just had something go horribly wrong, and he goes, I don't get it. I don't get what I did wrong. And then Dwight, with some incredible life, says, not everything's a lesson, Ryan. Sometimes you just fail. I love it. Like, it's not a, what's the big aha? Like, you just failed. Like, this is life sometimes. And yet what I have found, and again, I have spent 4 decades in the church. I know church culture deeply. What I have found is we have a hard time with this. We want to explain it. And so much in the culture of evangelicalism is this need, this burning desire to, if something bad happens, spiritually explain it away and dismiss it. So in the face of life's brevity, when we get these reminders, what we have a tendency to do is this knee-jerk reaction to dismiss it, get rid of it, explain it away, pat yourself on the back, move on. And it's actually a numbness. It's a coping mechanism that causes us not to see what's really going on. Like, think of some of the things that we say to people. When something happens and someone's going through things, we'll try to encourage them, and we'll say things like this. Well, don't worry. Everything happens for a reason. Now, maybe you've said that. Probably you've had that said to you, right? Everything happens for a reason. Now, it's usually said with great intentions, right, to be fair. But when you are saying that to someone who's dealing with pain, telling them that there's a reason why they're suffering, there's a reason why they're hurting, don't worry, it all happens for a reason, is not as comforting as you may think it is. And so the person going through a hard time is going, you want me to take whatever situation I'm going through and apply it through that filter? There's a great reason why I feel as crummy as I do right now? Like, that's not as encouraging as we think. Or how about this one? I love this one. Well, don't worry. God won't give you more than you can handle. Well, I wish God didn't think I could handle so much because my life has been hard. You know what I mean? Like, oh, great. God thinks the world of me because this is so hard. And he just keeps giving me more and more. And I'm so glad God thinks highly of how much I can handle. But I can't handle this, right? And we say these things, and again, I think they're said with good intentions. But friends, if we can just be real for a moment, this is not the right response to the brevity of life. This is not the right response when someone is going through something hard. In fact, these kind of statements are what I would call thought-terminating cliches. Thought-terminating cliches. You say it, and the thinking is done. We move on, we're done. It's a way of getting out of that moment. Oh, this is awkward. Wow, you're going through it. I don't know how to explain that. That is heavy cliche. Thought-terminating cliche. Bam, don't worry. God won't give you more than you can handle. I'm out. I walk away, wipe my hands clean. We all feel good. But it's a numbness to the brevity of life. It's a refusal to sit in that space, to feel all the emotions of that, to ask the deeper questions of God, where are you in the midst of this? What are you doing? How are you showing up in the midst of this? And I have found that when we try to spiritually explain away hard moments, it actually makes it way more difficult than just sitting in the space and going, okay, God, what's the next thing that we should do? And so we have been on this journey with my wife, trying to figure out. So the first step that we did is we had her do a whole bunch of tests that she had not done before, and basically looked at all aspects of her body to figure out, does she currently have cancer? Those all came back negative. Awesome. Worth celebrating. Doesn't solve the bigger problem, though, right? So all we knew is we had a little bit of time. We caught it with enough notice to know, hey, we're going to have to choose something preventative. And when you look, if you have studied BRCA2 or you see people on this journey, the preventative measures that are recommended are heavy. I mean, these are really heavy things. And so this year has been filled of really deep, hard conversations with my wife and I, where we talk about the brevity of life. We talk about this is going to be difficult. This is going to be hard. And so about a month ago, my wife made a courageous, bold decision where she got a preventative double mastectomy. And the way she did it with all the reconstruction and all that was a 9-hour surgery. It is a massive surgery on her body. And just to be transparent with you, that day that we dropped her off, and then I'm alone for like 9 hours, right? I'm processing this. I joked with her as they were wheeling her off. I said, this seems a little bit unfair. You're about to go to sleep, and then you're going to wake up, and it's going to be over. I have the longest day ahead of me, right? I'm going to be fully awake for the next 9 hours while you're going to be asleep. And obviously that was tongue-in-cheek, but that's what it felt like, of like, I don't know how to have these next few hours where I'm worried about you, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong in this surgery. This is a pretty massive surgery. And I remember dropping her off. I put on a strong face. I walk out of the hospital. I get into my vehicle, and I lose it. I mean, I just start crying. And I'm not normally a crier, especially in a setting by myself, but I just sat in my Jeep, just cried in the parking lot. And all these emotions and all the heaviness and all the weight, just the brevity of all of this, just overwhelming me. And then I start driving around, I'm like, what am I going to do for an entire day? Like, they literally said, don't wait in the hospital. This is such a long procedure. Go home. Go do something. It'll help you take your mind off it. Well, guess what? That's easier said than done. And so I'm driving around. My eyes are all blurry. I'm like, I don't know what to go do. And so I went and sat at a park by a lake and just sat there and contemplated life and thought all sorts of things and was just staring at the water, talking to God, trying to process all of this. Then I just realized, like, physically I'm like feeling anxious. So I'm like, I need to go move my body. So then I got home, I got my dogs out, and I'm like, we're going to go for a walk and put on a weighted vest to even make it hype, and walked 4 miles around my neighborhood and just tried to get some of that anxiety out. Still didn't help, So then I went home, and I'm like, I'm just going to clean stuff. I stress cleaned like nobody's business. I had that place shining, and eventually my kids came home from school, and I'm around the house cleaning, and I'll always remember this. I'm in my room making our bed, and evidently I was making it over and over again. I didn't realize this. And my daughter walks in, and she looks at me, and she goes, Dad, what are you doing? I said, no, I'm just cleaning up, making the bed. And she's like, you've already made it. Like, you keep remaking it. Like, why are you doing it? And I wasn't even aware of like what I was doing. I was so just preoccupied with worry and concern and wanting to hear back on my wife. And just one of the longest days of my life while she's in this surgery. Now, I want to just stop here for a moment, and I want to brag on your pastor for a second. Now, that was one of the hardest days that I have gone through, just all the worry, all the weight of that. But I didn't tell people like, hey, come reach out to me, make sure I'm okay. I just was like, hey, everyone's got their thing going on. This is what I got to go through that day. I get a text from Chris that day, and he's like, hey, where are you? And I'm like, I'm at home. Why? And he's like, I've been looking for you. Chris, without even saying anything to me, drove down to the hospital, went to the waiting room, looked all through the waiting room for me. He didn't know I had been sent home. Then he thought, okay, he's not in the waiting room. Maybe he went to one of the restaurants nearby. Chris went to every single restaurant, popped his head in, and was trying to find me and surprise me and just be there for me that day. That will say more to you than anything else on his theology or how he is a pastor. That's how he is as a human. That when I needed someone, he didn't ask, hey, can I help you? Can I pray for you? He just showed up. And the irony is, I wish he would have told me he was doing that because I would have met him. You know what I mean? Like, that would have been great. But I said, they sent me home. This is like such a long deal. But I'll never forget the fact that Chris showed up. Chris was there trying to find me, trying to be there for me with the weight of all of that I've been going through. Now, to give you an update, overall, everything went great. My wife has been doing amazing. She's cancer-free. We have so much to celebrate. But it doesn't suddenly make things easy. For example, 2 weeks after this massive surgery, she's been sleeping in a lazy boy chair because she can't even sleep on her side. So we're talking, this is like a major deal to recover from. And 2 weeks after, she starts going downhill. Like, she's not looking well, she's not doing well. And I'm like, honey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? So she starts texting her doctor, like, hey, here's the things. He's like, you got to go to the emergency room. So we take her to the emergency room. I'm like, I don't know, they may give you some medicine or something. And we get that, and they're like, we're going to admit you overnight. Okay, so this thing just starts ramping up. And then as we're talking about, okay, so how long she's going to be here, they're like, well, she's going to have to go back into surgery tomorrow. We're like, what? Like, yeah, we have to have an emergency surgery. Your wife has an infection. So we're going to go back in. They had to reopen the incision 2 weeks prior. So we then find out 2 weeks after the surgery, we spent 4 days at the hospital that week. When I say that the brevity of life has been a subject in my household, I'm not kidding. All of this has been such a reminder of these things we take for granted. We don't know any of them. That life is incredibly difficult. But here's what I know. Everybody's going through something. Now, you may not be going through BRCA2 in your family. But I promise you, if we were to go around the room, go, hey, what are you going through? What are you worried about? What's heavy in your life right now? We would all be able to share something. Now, the sad part is, in a lot of settings, and sometimes this can be true of church, we don't share those things. No, I'm great, blessed, doing awesome, everything's awesome. And yet, if we were just to be honest, go, yeah, there's some hard things, some heavy things. What do we do with those things? Because those things are the reminders to you of the brevity of life. Those are the things that God will use to give you a perspective that you're not going to find when everything feels great. What do we do with that? Well, I want to show you a passage in 2 Corinthians that I find incredibly bizarre and incredibly moving. And this is one of those, if you're new to church, if you're new to this Jesus thing, this Christianity thing, and you're like, hey, I'm checking it out, I'm not really sure, you're going to realize quickly that this passage makes no sense. Okay, I'm just pointing it out. The obvious, right? You're going to be like, that's not how that works. And I'm going to say, yes, you're right. But if we want to sit there and go, is Jesus trying to teach us something? I think there's something intriguing here to stare at and go, maybe there's something more than we might be aware of. So if you're with me, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, begin reading in verse 7. It says this. This is the Apostle Paul writing. So to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, if this is the first time you're reading it, you're like, Paul, that doesn't make any sense. When you're weak, you're strong? No, it's actually the opposite. When you're weak, you're weak. Right? When you're weak, it falls apart. When you're weak, you don't have enough. And Paul goes, no, I figured something out. That when I'm weak, I actually get a different kind of strength I get to tap into. Paul's explaining something here that you and I would do well to lean into and go, what has Paul figured out? How has Paul experienced Jesus in this way? Now, Paul uses a word. The word for thorn there is a cool word, skolops, which is just fun to say. Throw it into your next church gathering and be like, hey, how's the skolops in your life going? And I'll be like, wow, it's Greek. But here's what's fun about this word. It's the only time it's used in the New Testament. This is not a common word. It's not like everybody talks about it. Paul is sharing something interesting about his own journey. And if you don't know who Paul is, wrote the majority of the New Testament. The dude was like dialed in with Jesus, had experienced Jesus in profound ways. And he talks about this skolops that he has. And the idea being, it's like if you're walking on the beach and you're barefoot and you're just walking along and then you step on something and it lodges itself in your foot. And you're like, oh man, but you can't get it out. So then what happens is like you can still walk, right? It's not killing you, but every step you take, you're like, ow, ow. I feel it with every single step. That's the image Paul's talking about. Or like you're working with your hands and you get a splinter. And you're like, oh man, that thing is deep, but you can't get the splinter out. So every time you touch something, you feel that thorn that's in there as you touch it. This is the image of Paul's life. Every time he does whatever he's doing, he feels the skolops. And he says, Jesus, if you would take this away from me, I would be way better for you. Like the things that I could do for you would be so increased if you would just remove this skolops from him. And notice Jesus' response. Nope, this is actually going to be good for you. Now I also want to point out this skolops, this thorn, did not come from God. Okay, this is where bad theology comes in. We go, oh, God sent this to me. No. Paul's very clear. This is a messenger of Satan, which is a pretty dramatic way of saying not God, right? This is not from God, but God doesn't remove it. God allows it to remain. And there's something fascinating here. Paul's going, why would you not remove this from me. And then he comes to the conclusion, oh, this is actually going to be for my good. That this is actually going to help me be better than I would be otherwise. Which leads me to this question. What if the skolops, the hardships in our lives made us better? What if that was the way we looked at it? What if the brevity of our lives, these moments where we go, this is so hard, this is so heavy, what if those were actually those moments where we said, I'm going to get better because of this? Now, there's a series at another church that I got asked to preach in. It was a relationship series. And so they were going through this marriage book, and they gave me a copy of the book and said, hey, can you pull some ideas from this book for your thing? And I said, sure. And the book was called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work by John Gottman. Maybe you've heard of this. It's huge bestseller, millions of copies. John Gottman and his wife Julie are considered like relationship experts, right? They've spent like 40 years scientifically studying marriages, like watching couples, watching what they do, and then drawing conclusions. If you talk like this, if you do this, if you, then this is what leads to a divorce. This is what leads to a healthy marriage. As I was reading their book, I came across this sentence, and I literally stopped reading and just started laughing out loud. This is the sentence. One of the most surprising truths about marriage, most marital arguments cannot be resolved. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, that's the last thing that you expect to read in a book about making marriages work, right? Most marital arguments cannot be resolved. It was like one of those moments, I was reading this in bed, and my wife was next to me, and I said, honey, I got to read this to you. Like, this is hysterical. Not sure what to do with this. This is one of the leading relationship experts in the world saying this conclusion. Most marital arguments cannot be resolved. Okay, what do we do with that? Well, he goes on to say it like this. Couples spend year after year trying to change each other's mind, but it can't be done. Can I get an amen from the married people in the room today? Amen. This is because most of their disagreements are rooted in fundamental differences of lifestyle, personality, or values. By fighting over these differences, all they succeed in doing is wasting their time and harming their marriage. Instead, they need to understand the bottom line difference that is causing the conflict and learn how to live with it by honoring and respecting each other. Only then will they be able to build shared meaning and a sense of purpose into their marriage. Translation: if you think that you have to resolve all of your marital conflicts before you can enjoy your marriage, you're in trouble. It's not going to happen the way you think. But if you can go, hey, even if we don't get some of these arguments resolved the way I want them resolved, we can learn how to love and respect each other. That is a secret that they have found that healthy couples have. As I read that and I was thinking about this season in our life, I came up with this conclusion. Gratitude doesn't need resolution. The things in your life that you're going through do not have to resolve in order for you to be grateful. That is a huge aha encouragement for some of you today. To go, well, I've been waiting. Like, as soon as this gets figured out, as soon as this resolves, then I can breathe easy. No, you don't need resolution to experience gratitude. If you have this mentality of, when this happens, I will feel so great. When this is resolved, when this is done, right, then I will feel, no, that's not how gratitude works. You don't need resolution. And so Michelle and I have walked away with a tremendous amount of gratitude this year and very little resolution. She's had 2 surgeries this year. She's got 2 more planned. This is going to be an ongoing, long journey for us. And yet, we have experienced gratitude as we have been reminded of the brevity of life, that we are given a gift. What if the hardships in our lives made us better? So as we close, let me give you a couple questions to consider. Number 1, what hardship are you going through? I would suspect all of us could answer this somehow. And maybe you're in a season where it's a relatively easy hardship. Grateful for those seasons too, right? Where you're like, actually, we just came out of something, or it's been relatively smooth sailing. Great. But you know, if you live long enough, you know there's hardships. Life is difficult. So what hardship are you going through? It may be a loss of something that you are trying to process. And maybe today, Mother's Day brings out that loss to you. It may be a disappointment. I was hoping this would happen, and I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe it's a challenge in front of you that you're like, I don't know how to get past that. I don't know how to get beyond that. What is the hardship you're going through? And then more importantly, what is it creating in your life? Are you going to have the same conclusion the Apostle Paul had, that, hey, because of this thing, because of this skolops, I'm actually better, that I'm seeing Jesus emerge in powerful ways, not because I'm dismissing it with some thought-terminating cliche, but because I'm actually leaning in, I'm being present to that, and I'm seeing God show up, not as I dismiss my weakness, as I acknowledge my weakness, as I acknowledge it. That is an invitation for you and I to experience Jesus in profound ways. So I'll close with this quote from Bianca Sparacino. She says, "The kindest people are not born that way, they are made. They are the souls that have experienced so much at the hands of life. They are the ones who have dug themselves out of the dark, who have fought to turn every loss into a lesson. The kindest people do not just exist, they choose to soften where circumstance has tried to harden them. They choose to believe in goodness because they have seen firsthand why compassion is so necessary. They have seen firsthand why tenderness is so important in this world." Let's pray together. Jesus, may you make us better as we lean into the hardships in our life. As we have our own moments of reminders of life's brevity, reminders of loss and disappointment and pain, rather than trying to spiritually dismiss them away, may we be present in them as Paul was. And we lean in and figure out what you're trying to do in the midst of that. May we discover this incredible truth that Paul says, that in our weaknesses, you are actually made stronger. And your strength is revealed in us in unique ways. So God, today I pray over all of the hardships that people are going through. Some of them are heavy. Some of them feel overwhelming. They feel daunting. But may we be reminded that you are there in the moment with us. And maybe you won't take it away the way we're praying, the way we're asking. Maybe it'll just sit there with us and